Hi, I'm Daniel Andrews, owner and creator of the DAN Show, and welcome to my very first 2022 NFL breakdown. I am previewing the Jacksonville Jaguars, and here's how the video is going to work. I'm going to give you 3 things I like about the Jacksonville Jaguars, followed up by 3 things I don't like, but stick around to the very end where I break down the schedule, preview the Vegas yearly win totals, and reveal if I recommend putting action down on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, let's start off with the 3 things I like about the Jacksonville Jaguars. The first thing I like about the Jacksonville Jaguars is the hiring of Doug Peterson. This is a coach with NFL head coaching experience, unlike Urban Meyer. And also you have in Doug Peterson a coach who's won a Super Bowl as an NFL head coach. I think of all the new coaching hires this year, Doug Peterson might be the best one, or my favorite, if not my number one choice. It would definitely be either 1 or 2. This was just a great hire as the head coach. And both coordinators he's bringing in are coaches he's worked with before. And I also really like that with Mike Caldwell as the new defensive coordinator. He's going to bring in the same scheme. You're running a quote-unquote 3-4 defense. It's just going to be a little bit different terminology. Last year, you were switching from a 4-3 to a 3-4 defense. Not only were you switching schemes, you had to bring in some new personnel and change some things around. There'll be a little more familiarity with the scheme that Caldwell's bringing in. And with both coordinators knowing and working with Doug Peterson before in the past, there'll be a lot more familiarity that Jackson didn't have last year under Urban Meyer. The second thing I like is the front 7 upgrades. Of course, you got number 1 pick Trayvon Walker. Then you have one of my draft crushes in Devin Lloyd. Both these guys should be day 1 starters immediately on the front 7. But you have one of the more underrated signings in free agency, and I'm butchering the name here, Forsyth Okulin. The former Yale Bulldog, led the NFL with 192 tackles last year. He'll never leave the field. And here's the thing. If you're looking at just pure athleticism, this unit's a top 10 unit easily, maybe even top 5. And I'm not even including 3rd-round pick Chad Muma, who should be a special teams demon day 1. You already got Josh Allen, who's one of my favorite players, who could be a superstar if he stays healthy. Now you got Walker on the other side. If nothing else, this front 7 is very fast and very athletic. It's just a question of putting everything together. The third thing I like about the Jacksonville Jaguars, and this goes hand in hand with the front 7 upgrades, is the overall talent improvement. This reminds me a lot of when Doug Peterson came to Kansas City with Andy Reid in 2013. Doug Peterson was the Chiefs quarterback coach. What Kansas City did was that they changed from a 3-4 scheme under Romeo Crennel to an attacking 3-4 scheme under Bob Sutton. I see a very similar change going on the 3-4 systems. You're going from a more simplified, aggressive type of scheme, but you're still using the same 3-4 system. They also went from a 2-14 team that had number 1 pick in the draft to an 11-5 team that made the playoffs. And part of that was an overall roster improvement. Now, the one thing that Jacksonville is not going to do that Kansas City did was they brought in Alex Smith. You're not changing quarterbacks, but you brought in a different scheme on defense, which was simplified and more aggressive, and you also brought in talent all over the field. I talked about the front 7 already, but what about Brandon Sheriff, one of the best offensive linemen in football, and you also got Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram, 2 day 1 starters on the offensive side of the ball. And with talent upgrades, I didn't even talk about Trevor Lawrence or Travis Etienne. If nothing else, this year's roster is a lot more talent than last year's roster. So just to recap the 3 things I like about the Jacksonville Jaguars, Doug Peterson, and I also like the overall coaching staff. I think it's a much better unit than last year's. I like the front 7 upgrades and the overall talent improvement. Now, 3 things I don't like about the Jacksonville Jaguars. The first thing I don't like is the lack of continuity with the head coach. You have 3 schemes in 3 years, 3 coaches for 3 years. Now, I do like that you're sticking with a 3-4 defense this year. Last year, you switched from a 4-3 to a 3-4. This year, you're sticking with a 3-4. So there will be some continuity. And I do think that this coaching staff, unlike the previous 2 regimes, will make it to 2023. But for 2022, it's a red flag. Take a look at at players that have been there for 3 or 4 years. What's it like here in Jacksonville? Well, it's third year, third new head coach. It's really hard to have continuity and get everybody on the same page when it's been a revolving door for the last 3 years at the head coach position. And the lack of continuity is compounded with the second thing I don't like about the Jacksonville Jaguars, and that's a lot of youth and inexperience on this roster. It's one thing to bring in a new head coach for the third straight year, but it's another thing when you got a lot of youth. On the defensive side of the ball, you got 2 rookie starters that are going to be day one starters, but then you got 2 second-year players that are going to be day one starters. Trevor Lawrence is a second-year player. Travis Etienne, basically a rookie. Then you have a bunch of free agent signings. Now, these are 2 separate and different things I don't like, but it's really magnified when you bring these two things together. You have a revolving door on head coaches. Now, you also have a bunch of youth and inexperience combined with a bunch of free agents. Now, long term, this could be a good thing, but I'm only looking at 2022, and a lot of young players and a lot of new free agent starters is not really a good thing for 2022. The third thing I don't like about the Jacksonville Jaguars is that there's no real true number one wide receiver. Take a look at Josh Allen. And he was a below average NFL starting quarterback. Then they trade for Stephon Diggs. Now he's an elite starter. Now there are a few things besides the Stephon Diggs trade that really elevated Josh Allen from mediocrity to elite, but that was a big part of it. Now, don't get me wrong, Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk are excellent upgrades to the wide receiving core, but on 3rd and 7, who's that guy that you're going to? When you're a second-year quarterback, I would have really liked seeing Jacksonville get an absolute stud saying, hey, this is my guy. And while the wide receiving core is definitely upgraded and will be better than last year's, I don't think they have that number one guy, and I think that would have been something I would have liked to see Jacksonville do. So just to recap the 3 things I don't like about the Jacksonville Jaguars, the lack of continuity, 3 head coaches in 3 years, a lot of youth and a lot of free agency combined with the lack of continuity. It's going to be tough to overcome for 2022. And there isn't a number one wide receiver that I see on the roster. Now comes the schedule preview and the Vegas yearly win total breakdown. Now, I'm using the Caesar Sportsbook app and the Barstool Sportsbook app, and both apps have the Vegas yearly win total as 6.5. So if you're betting over, Jacksonville need to win 7 games in order for you to win on that bet. So let's take a look at Jacksonville's schedule. Now, personally, with the youth and the new head coach, I see Jacksonville being a team that gets better as the year goes on. But this schedule has 4 out of the first 6 games on the road, with Indianapolis coming weeks 2 and 6. Now, in the past, Jacksonville's done really well against Indianapolis, but after Jacksonville knocked them out of the playoffs last year, I really see the Colts circling those 2 games, and for the Colts to come early in the schedule isn't a good thing for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I also see a trip to LA week 3 followed by a trip to Philly, lots of travel. And before the bye, Jacksonville will play all 4 AFC West opponents plus the Denver games in London with no bye after the London trip. That's going to be very difficult to go ahead and do it. So if I'm betting the over, I need 7 wins, and I would break the schedule down as 4 wins before the bye and then 3 wins after the bye. And bottom line, I just don't see it. I see Jacksonville, let's say I was a diehard Jaguars fan, I could see a win against the New York Giants at home, but after that Denver game, which is a tough one in London, I see 2 definite losses. See, if I was 4 and 6 or 5 and 5 going into the bye, getting the 7 wins is possible, but I don't see it. I think the Colts are going to be out for blood. Denver and London is possible, but the other 3 AFC West opponents are probably losses. Week 1 on the road would have to be a win, but I really doubt it. And to get to 7 wins, can you sweep Houston? I think you win one of them, but you probably lose one of those 2. I like Jacksonville's talent. I like their upside. I like their coaching. I'm not betting on the Jacksonville Jaguars, but if I was, I'd recommend the under. Now, here's some advanced betting advice. I think this number is going to drop from 6.5 to 6 before the season starts. So if you like Jacksonville and you want to bet the over, I would wait because you may be able to get 6. But if I was to bet the Jacksonville Jaguars, I would probably take the under. Now, this is my opinion. This is what I think, but I really want to hear from you. What do you think? Drop a comment below and let's talk football. Now, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. What are you waiting for? Like the video, give me a thumbs up, and ring the bell. That way you're notified every time I come out with a new video. Tomorrow, I'm going to break down the Detroit Lions, so I will see you tomorrow.